Joining us now on the Deseret First Credit Union Hotline as we move from basketball to BYU football in the NFL is Bill Huber, publisher of PackerReport.com. Bill, nice to have you on BYU Sports Nation.
Happy to do it. How you guys doing?
We are fantastic. You cover one of the most talked about teams in the NFL, and when we talk about passionate fan bases, good grief. People own the Green Bay Packers. What is it like to cover a team that has public stock and that so many people are invested in?
Maybe this is universal. I don't know, but I think the fans think they're coaches, and I think the fans think they know more than the coaches, and it's probably a universal thing that has nothing to do with people owning the team. But it's it is a passionate group, and they're perpetually disappointed because it's been a whopping 5 years since they won a Super Bowl.
Talking about expectations, good grief.
Right.
Now, Bill, we always hear these stories about, on Sundays during a Packer game that literally the streets are empty. Is that an accurate assessment of what it is like when the Green Bay Packers are at home on a Sunday?
It's been a long time since I've been out and about on a Sunday. I'm usually at the stadium on Sunday, so I guess I can't say, but I've seen just watching games on my recorder afterward, where they sometimes show the streets of Green Bay. So yeah, I assume so. It is. It's a great city to live, but there's not a whole lot to do, and people love their football teams for sure.
The Packers have a few connections to the BYU Cougars recently. I know that Vic So'oto was an undrafted free agent. He made the roster for the Packers and contributed, did some good things up there. Mm-hmm. Now, Rob Daniel, as an undrafted free agent, has been signed by the Packers, spent time on the practice squad, and now it's Manoa Pakula's turn as a linebacker out of BYU to try and do the same thing as Vic So'oto and Rob Daniel. You wrote a piece on Pakula as he tries to make that roster. What did you learn in your conversations with him and with those that liked what he brought to the table for the Packers?
Well, you guys know his story better than I do, but he's a heck of a talented football player. If you're a person who likes testing numbers, the Packers drafted a kid in the 4th round out of Stanford, Blake Martinez, to play inside linebacker, and they need a guy who can play pass coverage, and he's a pretty athletic guy. Blake Martinez is. Pakula's a better athlete than he is.
Wow.
So if you're basing it just on measurables, I would say Manoa's got a heck of a shot here. He's faster than Martinez. He's got better change of direction, better vertical leap. So there's a lot to like there. But as you guys know, there's also some question marks there too.
When you look at free agents, undrafted free agents trying to crack a 53-man roster, overall, it is very difficult, in the NFL. But the Packers have been one of those teams that seem to have had success with undrafted free agents. In your opinion, how difficult will it be to make this roster?
It's certainly not a given, but I don't think it's a long shot either. Look, this is a team that went in the draft. They were pretty suspect there at inside linebacker to begin with, and then they got by the last year and a half with Clay Matthews, their Pro Bowl linebacker. They put him at inside linebacker basically because they had nowhere else to turn. So they stuck him there. He went up. It went well, but they're moving Clay Matthews back to outside linebacker. So there's an automatic void at inside linebacker. Then on top of that, they cut one of the guys who started about 10 games from last year. They've already gotten rid of him. So that's basically 10 of your 16 games that were started by Clay Matthews and the other guy was Nate Palmer. Those guys aren't part of the equation anymore. They drafted Martinez, and then they signed Manoa and a kid from Mississippi State, Beniquez Brown. So, if you're losing Matthews and Palmer, I think common sense says they're going to keep two guys. Obviously, they're going to keep the draft pick. So it might be the battle of the undrafted rookies of Pakula versus Beniquez Brown, or maybe they keep them both. Another factor is one of their projected starters right now is Sam Barrington. He's been on IR 2 of his last 3 years, so there's not a track record there where you want to put a whole lot of stock in him. So, I would say coin flip at worst for him to make it.
Bill Huber of PackerReport.com with us on BYU Sports Nation. Given that Packers personnel and the higher-ups have seen a guy like Vic So'oto make the roster and now are dealing with a guy like Rob Daniel and these guys that played under Bronco Mendenhall's tough-nosed defenses, which seem to fit right in line with what the Packers want to do on a year-to-year basis, and that is just hit people in the mouth. Does that give an advantage to Manoah because he comes from BYU and there is at least a little bit of success that they have seen with BYU players in Green Bay?
I don't know about that. I think, and I think you got to think this. I mean, you got to take each individual guy as each individual guy. I don't think you can live on what players from the past did or didn't do. But Green, you mentioned their undrafted success in a few times here. That was one of the key selling points here from Manoah is he at his pro day, Rob Daniel was there, and he struck up a conversation with Rob, just saying, "Hey, what's the NFL like?" And Rob gave his story where he got picked up at the end of training camp. I forget where he spent his training camp. It wasn't Green Bay. The Packers signed him, and at the very end of the season, he got promoted to the roster. So at that point, Manoah was sold on Green Bay. All these guys wanted is a chance, and Green Bay will give their guys a chance. I mean, they're not going to play favorites with draft picks. I mean, up to an extent. I mean, if you're a first-round pick, obviously, but I mean, they're going to play whoever's better, and I think that's a selling point here. And that's what sold Manoah and a bunch of the guys that they signed is, you know what, you're going to come here, and you might be undrafted, but you're going to get as good a chance as anybody else. And if you can play, you can play. And if you can't play, you will play.
We've mentioned Rob Daniel several times during the interview, and as you mentioned, was promoted to the playoff roster this last season. Where does Rob fit into Green Bay's plans this year?
Yeah, I think he's got a pretty good chance to make it. They lost Casey Hayward. He started every game last year, played almost every snap. They lost him in free agency. So again, you need a body there. They didn't draft a corner. There's an airplane going over my head.
All good, man. That's real life.
But anyways, so they didn't draft anyone. They signed a few undrafted guys, but they like Rob. I mean, he is. Green Bay is a defense that likes to play press coverage with their corners, and I mean he's all about playing press coverage. I mean if there's someone's space to get into, he's gonna get into it. So I give him a good chance at it. If as an end of the roster guy, you got to play special teams, and that'll be the story. But I mean he's got experience here. He's gonna come in obviously in the playbook. He's gonna be ahead of all those other guys, and along with Hayward being gone, one of their veteran guys, Dimitri Goodson, he's been a disappointment. Kind of a special teams guy only. He's got a 4-game suspension to start this. And so again, I would think all things being equal, they would, I think they would probably give the job to Rob. Now we'll see how good things go out in training camp. At this point, I would say he's got a pretty good chance to make it.
Let's finish with this, Bill. I've always been intrigued about how the Packers interact with the fans and with the community up there. And during training camp, without fail, every year I see different Packers players riding fans' bikes to practice, and I think it's hilarious. And I like the camaraderie that they show and how they reach out to the community. Now, have you ever let one of the Packers ride your bike to practice?
No, I am lazy and I drive a car. No, I'm not. But it is really cool. And the kids will be out to practice. The players commute from Lambeau Field to the practice field, which is across the street. So it's 500 yards, maybe 1,000 yards. It's a fair distance, and the kids will be outside the Lambeau Field door where the players come out. I mean, they'll be out there, half hour, 45 minutes early, and generally, not always, but generally, one player will hook up with one kid, and they'll become bike partners for the year, and they'll get pretty close, and there's always good stories where not just jerseys bought, but maybe there'll be someone with cancer or whatever among those kids, and they form a type. And it is a long time tradition, and it's super cool to see. Look, players don't, as much as we want them to, they don't have to communicate with the fans. They don't have to do any of that stuff, But they do, and it's a pretty cool thing.
Has the whole Brett Favre thing, now that he's been back, has that fully healed?
Yeah, it has. I think what healed it was, I think that Aaron Rodgers won a Super Bowl. I think that was probably at that point. I think the fans are ready to move on. I don't think. Part of me wonders about Brett still, and the cynical part of me wonders if this is just all about money, because now the Packers can sell his jerseys in the pro shop, and Brett Favre's getting paid by the Packers for that to happen. And the cynical part of me thinks that's the case, but I think when they brought back Brett last summer. In front of the fans, and it was, they sold out the place in like an hour, and just to go see Brett Favre, and you got a humongous ovation. And I think, from Brett's perspective, I think that kind of, let's let bygone. I mean, he might not be thrilled with some things yet, but I think the welcome back he received really opened his heart back up to where maybe he was a kind of a bitter guy for a while. I think he's past it, and look, everyone's making money off the deal, so everyone's happy.
Follow Bill Huber at Packer Report on Twitter, and he is the publisher of PackerReport.com. Give it a look. Bill, we appreciate the time, and we hope that for Manoah Pakula's and Rob Daniels' sake that they get a chance to ride some of those bikes to practice moving forward for the Packers.